Well, it was in 1974, and I was up at about 2 or 3 in the morning and watching television, and there was a kid who was 11 years old they were trying to place in a foster program or get somebody to adopt him. And they were asking him, what do you want more than anything else in the world? And he said, I want to see the ocean. See the ocean? We live here on the ocean. Where does this kid live? And they asked him that. And he said, Santa Monica. I said, Santa Monica? And he's never seen the ocean? It bothered me so much that I waited around the clock until they finally opened, and I called. I said, where is that kid? Why hasn't he seen the ocean? And they said, oh, we got tons of them locked up here. I said, locked up? What did he do? So we haven't done anything. It's just that, you know, they've been abused or taken away from their families. And I said, but if it's not their fault, why aren't they going out? And I said, honey, we don't have enough people to take care of them. Or to take them out. I said, well then how about they come to our house starting, he said, you don't know what you're getting into. There's thousands of them. I said, well then let's just start 50 a weekend. And they started coming out to our house. It was just a mobile home at the time. 50 a weekend. And I was especially attached with a little girl named Karen. And she was adopted, fostered, she was a foster child from a couple of neighbors away, from Maryvale Institution. And she was a beautiful little girl, except that she had these patches all over her where her mother had burned her with boiling water. And she was very aggressive. So when we had the 50 to 100 kids a weekend, there would be fights and everything else. That was just the only way that she knew how to communicate. And I was thinking back to the time when I lost my hearing when I was 9 years old. And in those days they didn't test for hearing problems, and so they thought that I was retarded. And they put me in a retarded class. And of course the bullying and everything that goes along with that made my self-esteem so non-existent that I didn't even speak for 2 years. I'm sure I must have spoken to my parents, but it was all in my head. And the way that they got me to speak again was to put me in a drama class where I could be anybody but that retarded kid that I thought that I was. And I thought, you know, maybe we could do this with Karen. And next time they come over, we're going to have, I called up my friends that were dancers. I said, would you mind just starting a dance class and see how it works? Well, this little girl just transformed herself. She was beautiful. She had something to share. She had stories to tell. People related to her again. She had a future. She learned how to communicate. And just then, the state called and they said, well, we got to send her back to her mom. Send her back to her mom? She's the one that started the whole thing. Well, that's what the law is. Well, sure enough, we didn't hear what happened with Karen. And it turned out that her mom smashed her face in with a candelabra. And Karen was sent to a mental institution. And even a year later, she was still there, and we were never allowed to hear from her again, and we never have. But I think of her at least every other day, when it was the impetus, and that's what propelled me to start an organization that was going to help these kids communicate. And I started bringing all of our friends and Joe's friends and people in the business, and we wanted to teach ways of communication. And then Joe ended up, it was a big problem even getting people to accept the fact there was such a thing as child abuse back then. I mean, the people that were working in the area, social workers, but the general public wasn't aware. And they would just move away from me and go, God, you've got a terrible imagination. What person would ever hurt a child, especially a parent? And they would just turn their back and go. So making the awareness was a big important part to the concerts and the momentum that basically created the Free Arts Clinic.